last one. I'm getting pretty tired. Wait, where's his... Ah, here we go. Can't talk about Beheaded without mentioning his traits. Okay, so Beheaded's an interesting fellow. His normal ability has literally no power budget because it's blank. It still has this big box on it, which has no effects, which... Pity. Would have been fancier if it didn't have it. But, you know, doesn't do anything. He exceeds to gain a trait, one of these things, and also have a little bit of power and speed in the next hit. This is super important, actually. The power and speed here, if you didn't already notice this, means he's likelier to be able to land his next attack to be able to get one more gauge, so that then he can exceed again later. Like, he tends to snowball in that direction. Not in a super dramatic way, but it keeps his momentum rolling, which is important. Alright, so no, I should honestly start with these. Brutality, survival, tactics. In terms of power budgets, you can look at these and already know, like, well, 2 power is really, really good. 1 armor, 2 guard, unless they already have some printed defenses, doesn't do a lot. Means they might cover grasp or cross, usually. Range, however, very, very potent. So one of these is going to be the most powerful, and then this is definitely the 3rd place. Unless they're all already at break points, or he's mostly throwing mid speeds, which, you know, we'll see in a second. Which of these is better? Depends. Alright. We're going to go in speed order, because I think that's kind of telling. Twin Daggers. Speed 6, on curve. 3 or 5 damage, depending. Hit 7 with brutality. Oh. Becomes above curve with tactics. Oh. That's amazing. That's unbelievably good. This thing is a monster. Now, it's only a monster in certain situations, but when it is, it just wins, and you can't do anything about it. It's pretty scary. Alright. How easily can you set this up? Well, it's turn after a strike. That means either the opponent just struck and they were careless enough to leave themselves at range 2, where it's on curve, or they backed up to range, where, you know, you only have it because you have extra range, or you struck and you gain advantage, which always is going to mean you're at range 1, due to the 2 effects that give you advantage. Oh wait, hold on. Not quite. Knife Dance, this boost, actually lets you hit at greater range, gain advantage, which means that you can use it to set up Twin Daggers. He has Assault and then Phaser as his other advantage effects, which both leave him at range 1. So this is actually the Twin Dagger setup tool, even though Phaser Daggers is the most common setup. That's not safe against Grasp, so generally you want Phaser EX Daggers if you're going to do that, which throws away both copies of Twin Daggers, which, you know, look at this card. You want to play it twice. Alright, so Twin Dagger is obviously extremely potent. Let's see how these other ones stack up. Dive Attack. Speed 5, before close 3. Okay, it's a fast dive. Well, with plus 2 power, it hits 5 power, which is the same power as dive. What about with guard? With guard, it actually, with 1 armor 2 guard, it becomes a cross counter, which is significant. And with range, it just becomes rangier, which, you know, is good, but nothing amazing. The only important thing that dive attack does with regard to his traits is survival, the weakest trait, makes it a cross counter. And also a direct grasp counter. Yeah. So, it's a good card. In terms of its impact on these, doesn't do all that much with them. It likes survival, which automatically means like, oh, well, it likes the trait that we're probably getting last. Or at least situationally going to get last. And value least. Okay, how about Wrenching Whip? Yeah, Mad notes that survival also has more value than it appears against characters who rely on grasp likes, you know, speed 7 cards, to be answers at range 1 against things like daggers. So, that's true. Yeah, this makes daggers safe against the pokes that do not reposition, right? And if you have both tactics and survival, then Twin Daggers is well and truly safe against grasp, which is really, really scary. Alright, looking at Wrenching Whip. So speed 5, range 1 to 3, so it's on curve, which, you know, means, oh, Tactic makes it above curve. Nice. Hit, push, or pull 1. That means that normally this thing is actually basically safe against everything at range 3. Like, push or pull 1 means you push sweep out of range, you push spike out of range. If you need them into close range, and especially if you're defending, pull them into range 2, and then on your turn you can play daggers. Nice. That's really good. At range 4, only gets safer. Like, they have some sort of projectile they're using? Well, now you have a speed 5, basically projectile, that hits at range 4. Though they're not likely to be throwing that anyway because dive attack is so threatening. Alright, so tactics, quite good with this. It's already quite good, but that just makes it better. Brutality, plus 2 power, makes it power 5. That's nice because it means it beats defend, which is the, you know, the normal boost that's plus 1 armor, plus 3 guard. But much like dive attack, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's a slightly bigger deal here because you might be dealing with assault at close ranges or whatever, but not so much. Yeah. And then survival just makes it cover grass basically, which is nice. But tactics is the real star on this one. Yep, Mad says dive attack is important because it grants him that opening mix, which is important for an aggro character. Yeah, so opening mix up. Dive attack is a mix up with infantry bow. So dive attack is a fast dive, infantry bow is a projectile. As we established talking about the fireball meta, if y'all happen to see that video. Projectiles are automatically mix-up cards because, like, everyone can open with dive, but not everyone has a projectile. And if you have a projectile, the question is, what do you play? Like, if I play dive, you can play sweep or focus. If I play infantry bow, well, those both suck. Like, by default, you can't beat this. You have to have a special that deals with it, or you just play block or whatever. You can cross out of it, which is important in other, like, in actual zoner matchups against people who want to be at long range all the time. Beheaded is a mixed ranger or an all ranger, depending on how you look at it. I personally think of him as an all ranger. But from starting positions, infantry bow will not hit cross, which is important. Alright. Alright. So I've talked a little about attack interactions. I should probably come back to some boosts. Wolf Trap. Opponent cannot move. As an action, they may take your to discard this card. This is very situational. Like, Twin Daggers is so high value, it's hard to find times when Wolf Trap is correct, but sometimes it is. Like, sometimes this is what you need in order to lock opponents in place for a turn. But, it's not really all that worth considering. Dodge roll is actually quite good, but it's also on Wrenching Whip. So, like, generally, if you're at range 1 or, you know, like 5 or whatever, you can play Dodge roll. But if you're at 2 or 3, then Wrenching Whip is a lot more tempting. Tornado, plus 1 speed, now advance retreat 1. Okay, that's good. Like, that's plus 1 speed and move 1, which lets you set up a range and also be a little bit better at that range than otherwise you would be. So, like, it doesn't hurt to pass the turn because you got that plus 1 speed. That's really nice. This attack and this boost I consider to be about even. Unlike, you know, attack, preferably boost. But, like, yeah, Tornado's nice. It gives you a little bit of an edge. And dive attack has its uses, being a fast dive. So infantry bow is, yeah, it's just a projectile. It doesn't do anything particularly amazing. It has a boost, which is specifically there to set up, as the name suggests, called Knife Dance. Sets up Twin Daggers. Go figure. And is also just being a range boost. Good at making everything safer. You know, you can play Grasp at range 2, which loses only to focus. That's great. Like, so this is nice. I actually probably rate the boost specifically better than dive attack, or more important than dive attack. It's hard for me to gauge whether it's better than Retreat. It's probably right about the same level. Because the thing is that, so like, what does infantry bow do with stats? Well, with brutality, it can hit 6 power, which is actually really important because as we covered in the fireball meta, like, that breaks slow projectiles, which is a huge deal. And then with tactics, it goes to range 6, which, you know, means you're covering even more slower projectiles. So infantry bow actually does hit pretty important breakpoints. Survival makes it a cross counter, albeit kind of a unusual one. Like, you are specifically expecting them to hit you with a cross, and then they back out and you shoot them. But, you know, that's nice. So, like, this has really good upgrades all across the board, even though it's pretty mediocre to start with. So, like, Wrenching Whip starts out good and gets better. Infantry bow starts out pretty mediocre and then gets good. But they end up pretty close to the same value in my opinion. Yeah. These are all kind of near each other. It's weird. Like, I will usually play Tornado more than I will play the attack on Wrenching Whip, even though I think this is, like, just objectively more valuable to him as a character. That's because I like speed. Player thing. But yeah, Knife Dance sits somewhere around here. These are all pretty close together, but Dive Attack as an attack is a little bit underwhelming. Alright, Assault Shield. Oh man, shades of old versions of this card. Anyway, Speed 1. Okay. Power 1. Right. Armor 2, Guard 2. It's garbage. Alright, so this specifically covers Assault. Go figure. As printed. It's clearly designed to be used with these things, right? So before Close 2 means it does deal with Grasp, but it doesn't catch Cross from range 1. So you need Tactics to catch Cross, and also deal with certain projectiles at range 4, of course. If you were hit during striking power to your total guard, well, you only start with 2 guards, so you just gain plus 2 power. But if you have this, hey, it's 2 more power. So it obviously is designed to synergize with Survival. It actually treats Survival as basically a second copy of Brutality. So like Brutality gives this 2 more power, Survival gives this 2 more power. But you can also get value of it just by playing Defend, the normal boost, for that extra, 3 guard, which means that this will have plus 5 power if you get hit first, which makes it a lot more impressive suddenly. Like, with Defend, this is now a 6 power, 3 armor attack, which is incredible. Like, deceptively good. Corrupted Power is nice in that it's a power boost that lets you, get a little bit of extra draw power, but honestly, like, only do that if you really need the power boost and you just don't have a Grasp to spare, or you can't afford to spare your Grasp. Assault Shield is actually a good card. It just starts out worse than any of the others. Like, it starts out the worst. And then it becomes probably about the same tier as Wrenching Whip in terms of overall reliability. Like, that's a really good card. Alright. So, based on all these, we've seen that, like, Brutality makes everything better, but only really matters for Daggers and Whip, at least in my opinion. No, sorry, and Bow. So it matters for these 3. Tactics mostly matters for these 2. Matters a little bit for these 2. Survival matters for these 4. So, interestingly, Survival actually does a decent amount of work across the kit in terms of letting you cover things that otherwise would be annoying. But, not to rip Survival too much more, the thing that devalues it a little bit is you can cover those things by exceeding and just having that +1 speed bonus. And then it's much less of a problem. Where it's like, oh, well, if the opponent initiates, now you might regret not picking up Survival. But generally, like, as soon as you flip, you're like, well, I could pick up Survival, so I'm covering Cross. Or I could just play an attack that beats Cross if I really need to. Yeah. So, like, I still think Survival is a little bit low, even though it does change a bunch of interactions with these cards. Alright. Let's look at these Ultras. What about these Ultras, right? How do these interact? Phaser. Alright, so they're both 1 gauge, which is super, super important. This guy loves his gauge. He needs to exceed as many times as possible, so he burns that gauge. Phaser is also interesting because it has power innate, so it doesn't deal damage, so we know Brutality is right out. Before Close 8, then Advance 1. Alright. Tactics doesn't matter, it's always going to hit. Unless, well, barring very strange exceptions. Alright, so hit, gain advantage, puts in place continuous boost and sustain it. So you go, I'm at range 1, I have +4 power, and it's my turn. Let's go. Okay. Well, you do care about this getting stunned, although it's not very likely. But like things like EX Assault can really stuff it, or if you happen to be defending against a dive. So Survival actually does give it some value. And then it becomes a continuous boost, which does mean you don't get gauge for hitting with it. So even though it's 1 gauge, it doesn't refund itself, so it's more expensive than it looks. and then you're at range 1, which means, once again, you kind of want survival when you're at range 1 so that you can cover the grasps and the crosses, right? Like, you want to play a Twin Daggers and not worry about, like, and have these two up and not worry about getting grasped out, so that you can then hit for, oh, I don't know, 9, 11, something stupid. And then Assault Shield, like, you want these two. So, yeah, that makes these look really good. Oh, but what about this one? Wave of Denial. 127. Alright, so it's on curve at range 1. If you have tactics, then that makes it above curve at range 2. So it even steps cross, which is exceptional. Which also means we don't really care about this. Hit push 3. Okay, so once again, it beats sweep. So, like, we really don't care about the defenses unless the opponent plays focus. If the opponent's at the edge of the arena, plus 2 power. So it goes 2 and then 4. If they're at the edge of the arena. Now, notably, if they're already at the edge of the arena, even if they play focus, this is 4 power. That's great. That makes it 6 power. That's even better. Like, this is a really good attack. It's just fast, potentially above curve, decently strong, maybe even stronger, maybe even stronger than that. And it's safe against a lot of things. This boost, well, these ultra boosts are interesting. Spartan Sandals is a little bit underwhelming. Sometimes it's what you need, in particular to set up a infantry bow at long range that is just super, super safe. Like if they're at range 3 or 4, you can push them to 5 or 6 if you have tactics in particular. And that's nice, but it is pretty expensive. Phaser has an amazing boost. The huge drawback of actually playing the boost is, well, you give the opponent the turns. They can tech it, or they can find some way to diffuse your setup. That's why usually you play Phaser as an attack. Even though it costs a gauge, you'll end up with advantage, which means you can play the boost and then it's your turn again, which is great. Alright, so Wave Denial really likes these two. Phaser just likes this one. On balance, I don't think they change much about Brutality being, like, always value. Tactics probably having the most important interaction changes in terms of messing with curve. And then Survival being deceptively useful and changing a large number of interactions across the kit. I personally find Phaser is up here, but below Twin Daggers, and alongside Wave Denial in terms of its importance to his kit. I think Twin Daggers is hands down his greatest, like, source of power in his kit. Like, this is where most of his power budget is these 3 cards, and especially Daggers. Then he's got these 2 very good specials, this good boost on an okay special, and this, you know, even if it's a Zor special, like, it's still a fast dive. That's great. Like, that means you can't just safely dive against him, which is really important for a lot of characters. And has a good boost. So, depending on the matchup you're in, these are going to vary. Because of how breakpoints are hit, I think I personally still think Tactics is the best. But that's, like, as in I will always choose Tactics first. But it depends, right? Sometimes you look at your hand and you're like, well, what I need right now is Survival. Because I have an Assault Shield and we're at range 1. Take Survival. You know, do what the situation demands. This is a hard call, though. I don't know. Oh yeah, and of course this is really, really good because of how it sustains his, not the keyword sustains, but, you know, it helps him maintain momentum. All right. Well, I think that covers it. Reggie says when in doubt, Brutality. See, I would say when in doubt, Tactics, because being able to break curve is really important, and you can reposition with Tornado or Dodge Roll. At any rate, those are my thoughts on Beheaded's power budget, and Bison's power budget, and Imogen's power budget. So, I'll be uploading this later. Thanks for asking, Matthew, and I hope you find it interesting.